The biggest problem with digital FPV goggles is that they're too freaking expensive. These goggles too are like $400. It's too much. Who can afford that? And frankly, analog goggles aren't much cheaper. You'll pay $500 or $600 for a set of orcas or fat sharks. So what the heck is going on with this product? This is the Walksnail Goggles L, and it is a new FPV goggle for the Walksnail Avatar FPV system, and it comes in at just $200. That's on par with some analog box goggles. Does that mean that you can finally get into a digital FPV system at a price that like a normal person can afford? Maybe so. I'm Joshua Bardwell. You're going to learn something today. Before we take too close of a look at these exact FPV goggles, let's just take a second and get some background information out of the way just to make sure we're all on the same page. And these are FPV goggles, obviously, so you're going to use them to fly your FPV drone, right? We all know that. But especially because these goggles are so budget priced, they're likely to be more attractive to people just getting into FPV, and there may be some other things that maybe experienced people would think were obvious that beginners may not realize. And the first one of those things is that there are different FPV systems out there. These are DJI goggles. They work with the DJI video transmitters, and they're not really cross-compatible with the Walksnail system. These are Walksnail goggles, and they're going to work with Walksnail video transmitters, and they're not going to be cross-compatible with DJI video systems. So if you haven't yet made your decision about which FPV system you want to get, you may want to take a second and make that decision before you decide if these goggles are going to work for you. Because if you decide that DJI is the best system for you, there's no reason for you to even consider buying these goggles. They just won't work. But assuming you've decided the Walksnail system is the one for you, what you need to know is that there are basically two goggles for you to choose from. The Goggles L and the Goggles X. And we'll do a little bit more of a comparison between them later in the video, but what you should know at this point is that the Goggles X are significantly more expensive, around $450, $460 at most stores compared to just $200 for the Goggles L. They do bring quite a lot to the table though, but you may not care about that, especially at this price point. Let's go ahead and power up the Goggles L so we can take a closer look at how they work. We're going to do that by plugging in this cable that comes with them. It has on the other end an XT60 connector, which we're going to use to plug into anywhere from a 2S up to a 6S battery. So you'll be able to power these goggles with the flight packs that you probably already own for your drone, or you could have dedicated packs if that works better for you. When we plug in, the goggles will turn on and the screen will light up. We can't see very much on the screen because it's not actually bound to a drone, so we're not getting any camera image in the goggles. I'm going to go ahead and bind this to one of my Walksnail drones, just so you have something to look at. If you need a tutorial and you're just getting into the Walksnail system, you need a tutorial about how to basically just set up, bind, and do all that basic stuff with the Walksnail system. I'll put a link in the video description below to one of my beginner build series videos. It is a getting started guide for absolute beginners, and there's a video in there about how to set up the Walksnail system. The bind button on these goggles is right here. We're just going to push it with a little pokey device, and it will bind to the drone that I also have in binding mode. And it will bind to the drone that I also have in binding mode. Why wouldn't you bind? I'm sorry. Why aren't you binding? 1, 2, 3. We need a frickin' firmware update because this frickin' VTX doesn't support these frickin' goggles yet. Well, go back to the beginner guide and learn how to update the firmware, because if you get these goggles, you're going to need to do that. I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so now we can sort of see the image inside the screen, except we sort of can't because the goggles come with this lens in them, and the purpose of that is to give you a little bit of a binocular effect for your two eyes. See, one of the differences between a goggle like the Goggles X and a goggle like the Goggles L is the Goggles X has two screens. It has two screens and two sets of lenses, one for each eye. Whereas the Goggles L, well, one of the ways they saved money was to have a single screen. And instead of them being little like 3/4 inch, 1 inch micro displays like in the Goggles X, it is a much bigger screen. And well, bigger screens, you would think that bigger is more expensive, but no, with electronics and screens, smaller is more expensive. So that's one of the ways they're saving money. For the sake of this video, I'm going to see if I can I remove this? On the Fat Shark goggles, no, it doesn't look like I can. Well, I don't want to break the goggles. On other goggles similar to these, you can actually pop this out and just look directly at the screen. It doesn't look like you can do that here, so we're just going to have to do the best we can. And we can see sort of what we got going on here. Except, really, this isn't giving you an experience of what it's like to look in the goggles. Instead, I'm going to do my job as a reviewer, and I'm just going to look in the goggles. And everything is out of focus, because I have a terrible eyeglasses prescription. Okay, so here's number two. Number two is that they do have diopter inserts for these. They sit in front of this screen. I don't happen to have one, but if you do have a bad glasses prescription, you can buy those diopter inserts, and then you can just put it like here on your face, because as you can see, this is really not big enough for glasses to fit inside. Not any glasses that I have anyway. Looking at them with my glasses, though, I can tell you the screen looks pretty freaking good. It looks sharp. It looks clear. Let's put them on our head. See how they fit. Head strap, stretchy. We got this little thing here. Feels. I don't know if I love that. It feels kind of cheap. Well, I guess it is cheap. Oh, nice tension. Wow. Well, I've had worse. The foam is pretty high quality. It is a relatively dense foam. It doesn't feel like it is going to sort of fall apart. Some goggles have really flimsy foam. It feels like it's going to fall apart, like it's going to soak up sweat. It feels pretty good. As far as the actual fit goes, though, I am getting a little pressure on my nose, which is a very common thing on these goggles. I'm not sure why, but when I adjust the goggles so I'm seeing the screen centered up, I am getting some pressure on the nose. We could probably add some foam of some kind here at the nose and deal with that. And I'm getting a little bit of pressure across the head, whereas there's a little bit of leak here at the edges, and it's very common for some face. Well, every face is different, right? So these may fit you perfectly, but that's how they fit me, if that matters to you. I do think that they would be usable, especially if I added just a little foam here so that they weren't pressing on my nose quite as much. I do think they would be usable. They're reasonably comfortable. The head strap feels a little flimsy, especially what's going on with this thing here in the back. Like, it feels like this plastic here or rubber is going to eventually break off. This feels a little... I do like that they've rubberized the back of the head strap to help keep them from slipping down your face. That's a very nice touch. Questionable how long that's going to last, but who knows? Freaking screws here. Like, oh, there's a name for this kind of screw. I had to buy a spare one for my belt when I lost one of the screws that came with it. Chicago screws, I think they're called. They're using freaking Chicago screws to hold this together. They're trying to be a little premium. That's kind of nice. And it is clear that if you wanted to use an aftermarket head strap, could you? I'm not sure if there's enough room here to get the snap of an aftermarket head strap through. You could probably make it work. You can probably hear the fan in the goggles going, and you can see here an air intake, and then here on the inside, I don't know, there you go, you can see a air slot here. The fan has two purposes. One is to blow air over the screen so it doesn't fog up and blow air. If you go take them from inside in the air conditioning to the outside, things can fog up. And then the second purpose is to keep the goggles themselves from overheating. Famously, the Goggles X, when they first released, had a lot of problems with heat dissipation. Well, some people did, not everybody did, but it was a really notable thing. Fortunately, the Goggles L has been out for a little while and has been tested and doesn't seem to have problems with overheating. I'll let you know if I run into that in the course of this video, but for now, it seems like they're going to do okay. I mean, if it's 115 degrees out, maybe there's going to be an issue. We'll be testing it in the 85-ish degrees of Knoxville, Tennessee. There's not much more to say about the controls. There's a menu joystick here. We press the joystick to bring up the menu, and we navigate through the menu by going left, right, up, down. And there is a back button here, as well as a DVR button, which starts the DVR recording. The DVR will record your flight video on the goggles. Walksnail VTXs often also have the ability to record DVR do they always have the ability? I think they all do. The ability to record your flight video on the drone itself. The advantage of that is that the video is straight from the camera, so it's the highest quality possible. But the disadvantage is that if you lose your drone, then you've lost your footage. A lot of people like to record on the goggles themselves, and in order to do that, you will need to insert an SD card. But where is the SD card slot? Where is the SD card slot? Well, it's not where you think. It is under the foam. I don't know why. It seems like a really silly place to put it, but that's where they put it. So you're going to get an SD card, put it under the foam, and then you can record DVR. Just a reminder that if you finish this video and you decide you want to buy these goggles or any product that you see on my channel, there are links in the video description below, and they are affiliate links. They're not just there for your convenience, they're there to make me money. The way that it works is when you click those links down in the video description below, and then you make any purchase at the affiliated store, I get a little commission on the sale. It doesn't cost you any extra money, it just means that the store gives me a small percent of the purchase price. It's one of the easiest ways for you to support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. All you got to do is take the time to find one of those links, or you could even bookmark the links and just click on it every time you go shopping, and it's just a simple thing you can do. If that's the way you can support the channel, it sure does mean a lot to me. It's now a little while later, and I don't know if you can see, but I have got the custom diopter insert for the goggles. And since I'm probably not the only person out there who doesn't have perfect vision, I'll just say it ticks all the boxes. It's made to my actual optical glasses prescription. It's not just a generic +6 focus, +4 focus. It's a full prescription. I sent it in, they sent it to me, and it looks basically the same as my glasses. It is pretty cool that it doesn't just snap in with a friction fit, but it actually screws in. It's probably a little hard for the camera to pick that up. There are two tiny little screws. I say that's pretty cool because it's going to be really secure. It's not going to be coming out. But on the other hand, like I have in the past just popped my diopter inserts out of my goggles and handed my goggles to someone else to fly them, and you won't be doing that with these. They are screwed in place. You'll need a little screwdriver to take them out, and the screws are really tiny, and if you were to take them out in the field, you'd have a fair chance of losing them. So pretty much once it's in there, it's staying in there, and it's a real commitment to take it out. As far as the quality of the image, I mean, like, I don't know, like, I don't know what it looks like if you have perfect vision and no diopter insert, because obviously I don't, but it looks basically perfect to me. It's just in focus. Let's fly. I cannot believe how good this freaking camera looks. This is the Walksnail Pro camera. It is, I think, the best camera for the Walksnail system. It looks really great in the day. It has great dynamic range and great low light sensitivity. I've actually got a full video review of it. I'll put a link in the video description below if you want to check it out. Maybe I'll put it in a card at the end of the video if you want to finish up before you go check it out. This is just 720p. This isn't even the 1080p mode, and it just looks so freaking good. Okay, this isn't a review of the Walksnail system though. This is the review of the goggles. And the first thing I will say is that in order to see the bottom of the screen, I have to tilt these on my face. I really need like a little bit thicker foam on the bottom. Otherwise, they just tilt down in such a way that I can't see the bottom of the screen. And there's Walksnail OSD elements at the bottom of the screen, like the signal strength and the bit rate, that you really need to see. So that's a little annoying. How do I fix that? There you go. That'll do it. That'll do it. I mean, that's not how I want to be all day, every day, but that will do it. Of course, now I can't see the top of the screen. There we go. I found the perfect place to put the goggles so I can see both the top and the bottom of the screen. It's not going to feel good on my nose. Let's fly. It's going to take me a minute to get used to flying off box goggles. I don't know why, but it always feels so different. Almost, oh, it's not latency, but it almost feels like there's latency. Oh, feels like there's latency. What's the latency of this display? You can see at the, oh, maybe you can't see at the bottom of the screen. It shows 37 milliseconds. That's the latency of the Walksnail system, but there may be additional latency in this screen. Holy crap. It feels latent. Weird. It feels like there's additional latency. I don't like it. Is it me? Am I the problem?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I have to test the latency of these. Or maybe I'll just do what I did before and get Madstick to do it. Okay, setting aside the potential latency issue, which I have not currently verified, this is perfectly functional as a goggle. The amount of detail I can see is great. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything compared to like the full-size goggles. It's only the fit on the face. If I were willing to give up the ability to see the bottom of the screen, would they be comfortable? I really think they need thicker foam. I really think I want thicker foam. Or thinner foam up top would get it closer in. How is the built-in antennas? How's the range? Let me turn toward the quadcopter. Okay, we got full 50 megabits per second, 37 milliseconds. If I fly this way, let me, hang on, oh, turning and flying at the same time. Let me turn and face again the direction I'm going to be flying, and we'll fly down the road. We'll just test out these built-in antennas and see how they hold up. Yeah, 36, 27, 24, 21. Okay, it's definitely 16, 14, 12. The bit rate's dropping a little. Oh, there it gets. This is where it gets the worstest. Oh yeah, the worstest. It always gets bad there. I expected to get that breakup there. If we'd have flown through that area with no breakup at all, I would have been really impressed. But it's not performing any worse than like the Goggles X do with like patch antennas on. Again, this is not a rigorous range test. There are many variables which are not being controlled for here, but just sort of a seat of the pants gut check. I think it's performing really well for these little built-in antennas. I think it's performing really well. One of these days I'm going to do this and there's going to be some dude riding a dirt bike and he's going to surprise me. Riding a little four-wheeler or something. Yeah, we're doing good. Oh gosh. Oh, maybe not the best. A little break up there. Doing real good though. Low battery.
These goggles are a true game changer in the world of FPV, but they're not perfect and they're not going to be for everybody. They're a game changer because at a price of around $200, they open up digital FPV to way more people who couldn't afford it any other way. And yeah, digital video transmitters, they're still kind of expensive in the $130 to $160 range, and that's way more expensive than analog. But the big stumbling block for a lot of people is the need to spend $500, $600, or $700 on digital goggles. And with these $200 goggles, you don't have to do that. But this wouldn't be a fair review if I didn't acknowledge some drawbacks of these goggles, and some of these are going to be deal breakers for some people. The first is the fit, and this is always a struggle with box goggles to get them to fit right on your face. I can only speak for my face and how they fit. They didn't fit great. I think it could be solved with different padding to change the sort of angle that the goggles meet my face, etc. They were putting pressure on my nose. They were kind of digging into my nose. I couldn't really see the whole screen. I have to acknowledge that some of that may be because I'm using these custom lenses, and that changes sort of the size of the screen. But I don't think that's true. I've heard reports from other people that the field of view on them is so wide that it's hard to see the whole screen. And especially when you're going to put key OSD elements that you need to like not lose your link while you're flying, when you put that key information down at the bottom of the screen, you really have to be able to see it. Many people will push through that and be okay with it, but it has to be acknowledged. The other thing is the latency. The latency of the system, I measured it on the bench, and I don't have the most precise measuring equipment, but I found it to be about one frame, 16 milliseconds or so, longer than was actually shown on the screen. And what that suggests to me is that the LCD display itself, there's delay between the radio chipset getting the frame and the frame actually appearing on screen. So when you're seeing 35 milliseconds of delay, you're actually experiencing 35, 45, 51 milliseconds of delay. And as that delay goes up, as you fly further and further out, and it goes up to 40, 50 milliseconds, your actual delay is going to be in the 60 or so something milliseconds. I'm surprised I felt it as much as I did, because I've flown 60 or 70 millisecond links, and something about that link, I was like, man, it's not that bad. This one, though, I noticed it the second I took off, and well, if you're a beginner trying to get into the hobby on a budget, maybe that's not going to be a deal breaker for you, but it definitely was something that I immediately noticed and didn't like and wouldn't enjoy if it was my day-to-day experience. And if you're thinking, well, I'll just put them into the high frame rate, 100 frame per second low latency mode and shave off 10 or 15 milliseconds of latency, sorry, they don't support it. They only support the low latency mode because it's a 60 FPS screen, so you're just out of luck there. With all that being said, many people are going to find that the price difference between this Goggles L and whatever other $500 digital FPV goggle you were looking at, that price difference is going to be enough to get you to commit to the Walksnail system. You can truly get into like a little $200 digital tiny whoop with a Walksnail 1S VTX, these $200 goggles, maybe a $60 to $100 controller like the Radiomaster Pocket or the Radiomaster Boxer, and you're going to be in to a full FPV system for less than about $500 or $600, and not an analog system, but a true digital system. And there's definitely something to be said for that. We do have to acknowledge, though, that the DJI Integra is available for something like $350 or $400, which is like twice as much as this, but it's way better. Like, the goggles are way better, and the O3 is, okay, maybe not way better, but still better. What you ought to do is you ought to go back and look at my original review of the DJI O3 Air Unit. When it first came out, I reviewed it and the goggles too that came out with it. And that'll give you a sense of just how different the DJI ecosystem is. Remember that the price of those goggles has come way down since they first came out. Originally they were priced at like $500, and now they're down in the $350 to $400 range. And again, although that's twice as much, many people are going to feel that the experience of using that system is enough better to justify that price difference. In addition, I want you to check out my review of the Walksnail Goggles X, because that is the Walksnail system's sort of premium goggle, and it deserves a look. I'll put cards on screen to both of those, and I'll put links in the video description if you can't see the cards for some reason. I'll see you there.